Yeah, sit down. This is informal.
Okay,
Good morning, Ms. Luhring, last of the morning, so.
I am.
We do appreciate you coming in and your application, and I think we're ready to receive your opening remarks.
I appreciate that. I would like to thank everyone on the committee for this opportunity. I know that you have a lot of work to do and that this takes away from your practices and your lives. And so I do truly appreciate what you do. I think the merit system is very important and vital to both attorneys and non-attorney members in that you have the opportunity to guide the court in the future of court decision-making for the interest of all Iowans. I sit here today as one of the luckiest and most blessed individuals in the state of Iowa. To be considered for a position on the High Court is an honor and a privilege. It is important that you as the committee understand who I am and how I came to sit before you today. My roots are from a small Iowa family. We lived on a farm in northeast Iowa outside of Waverly. My parents, neither one have a four-year college degree. Three of my grandparents finished country school through the 8th grade. My grandmother on my mother's side managed to finish high school at West High in Waterloo. So I am truly the first in my family to finish a four-year degree and the first to finish an advanced degree. I will tell you, my family encouraged me. They wanted me to be studious. They wanted me to excel. In 1979, they even encouraged me to enter a contest, and I was elected Little Miss Pigtails of Bremer County in 1979 after an interview with the court promoters. I faithfully discharged those duties over a course of months and really enjoyed the opportunity. But until I got into junior high, I really thought I wanted to be a veterinarian. I liked animals. I had a pet cow. A lot of people can say that. And it wasn't until in 8th grade that I was in Mr. Cook's social studies class at Waverly Shell Rock, and he pushed really hard, that I found out that I really loved the social aspects of social studies. In high school, Mr. Dillon was wonderful to me. These are now retired teachers and coaches from Waverly Shell Rock, but I was on a top-notch debate team. Waverly Shell Rock had one of the best debate teams in all of the state of Iowa, and I competed all over. And it was then that I decided, well, veterinary medicine was a very honorable profession, and thanks to those that do that, it probably was not the route for me. And so I decided I wanted to be a lawyer. This came as a bit of a shock to my family, as you might imagine. And overall, they were very encouraging, and I was very lucky. I graduated towards the top of my class at Waverly Shell Rock, and I'd never had ambitions to really leave Iowa. I'm a native Iowan. I grew up here, and I had an opportunity to attend the University of Iowa. It was great to be a Hawkeye. I graduated with honors, and specifically I attended the honors program and the separate programming available to honors students at the University of Iowa. And my degrees are in political science with a minor in economics, and I nearly had a minor in history. I really do like history. After that, I had an opportunity to go to Drake Law School. I will tell you, one of the reasons I selected Drake, to be honest, was the fact that they gave me a very generous scholarship. I had the opportunity to attend a law school in the capital city of the state that I love, and that opportunity allowed me to be exposed to a whole variety of things. I was not your typical student, and I will tell you that. I was an honor student at Drake as well. School is something that has always come fairly easy to me, but I was not typical because I worked very hard for everything that I have ever received. And while they ask you not to work your first year of law school, I worked full-time my first year. I clerked, I waited tables at the Olive Garden, cleaned off other people's dirty dishes, and I also, on my extra spare night when I wasn't working, took orders at a Pizza Hut on Thursday evenings. It was a great experience for me. And even with those challenges of working a lot of hours, I had the opportunity to be on the prestigious moot court teams. I was on the client counseling team. I went to a variety of regional competitions, and I very, very much enjoyed the idea of probing clients and asking questions and finding out what secret the client wasn't supposed to be telling you in those interviews. I must confess, I still love animals. I will tell you that I have a Jack Russell Terrier, and his legal name is Sandbur's Legal Eagle Drake. People ask me if I named him for the rapper. Of course, I have to tell them that no, I named him for the law school. In addition to being on the client counseling team, I did the prosecutor internship here in Polk County, so that was some of my first exposure to going to court on a daily basis, and I loved it. From there, I participated in the prestigious programming that they have at the clinic. I worked with Bob Rigg. It had never occurred to me that a client might be in jail. That is just something that had never occurred to me. One of my first clients, although they weren't supposed to be, was in jail, and Bob said, let's take a field trip. And he took me to the Polk County Jail. Upon graduation, I returned to Waverly, a small county seat town. I have been in the same office serving Iowans for 23 years. I have survived 2 floods, 99 and 2008, and in both times my office had water. I finished a mediation program with Donna Van Note up at the North Iowa Dispute Settlement Center after I graduated. I also learned litigation from the attorneys in Northeast Iowa, as well as my former partner, Ralph Laird. Mr. Laird has passed. And I learned how to be a civil attorney. The bar in Northeast Iowa is an absolute model of what people should be. We call one another. We don't have discovery disputes very often. We sometimes have to agree to settle things in the courtroom, but that's what courtrooms are for. I serve the youth of tomorrow. I've been an adjunct faculty at the University of Northern Iowa for a number of years. I continue to be an adjunct faculty member at Wartburg College. I teach business law there. I've had the opportunity to have former students actually go to law school, and several are now colleagues, and one of my former students right now is in his 2nd year at Drake Law School. My career has also involved service to Iowans. In June of 2018, I was a recipient of the Governor's Award for volunteer service. I also have spent many years as an advocate for foster and adoptive parents. Did a lot of work with the Allison Area Foster Parent Support Group, including actually drafting their 501c3 materials to make them a nonprofit. I have served as a foster parent. I don't know that a lot of people can say that, but for a number of years, I had Iowa's troubled children in my home and had the opportunity to serve that way. The other service that I think is vitally important is I have spent 23 years serving the Iowa Bar and the citizens of Iowa as a pro bono attorney. I have taken cases with the Volunteer Lawyers Project. I also take referrals for no contact order hearings from our local shelter. Unlike other individuals that may have applied for this position, I've tried both civil and jury matters to completion. I have tried cases with juries, I have tried cases to the bench, and I have argued here at the Supreme Court building as well. I have stood by Iowans in their hour of greatest need, stood by them when juries made decisions, stood by them when some were sentenced to prison. I have also been in the courtroom when people expand their families and they adopt children that need good homes. I have never been in a large firm, so I don't know what it's like to have associate counsel. I don't know what it's really like to be associate counsel. I have been the lead counsel. I am not reliant on others to make objections. I'm not reliant on others to make motions. I do my own drafting. I do my own writing. I will tell you, and I would like to thank my wonderful staff. I have 1.5 staff that just do phenomenal things for me. The judicial branch priorities are protecting Iowa's children, and I have done that in delinquency proceedings. I have done that in children in need of assistance proceedings, and I have done that as a foster parent. They also cite providing access to justice, and I think it's imperative in any good court system that we have qualified people that represent Iowans in need. I continue to have a contract with the public defender. And I don't have that because $60 an hour is phenomenal pay. I have that because I serve Butler County and Bremer County. Butler County is not served by the public defense office. And they need good, high-quality attorneys to continue representing people that are accused of some very serious crimes. Additionally, I have seen firsthand people in need and continue to do pro bono work for that reason. I have concerns about the lack of staffing in some of our counties, and that continues to be an area where I think I could lead. Butler County has one clerk. They have a part-time shared clerk, meaning Bremer and Butler have the same overall clerk, but it is a problem. You go to there, and there are times where she simply can't wait on people that might come to the counter. The phone is ringing, the judge might want something, and invariably there's attorneys at some point needing to make copies for the judge as opposed to the court staff, which I don't mind helping, but I feel like she's torn in many directions, and that affects justice. 3, the operation of an efficient and full court system. I think we need to continue to modernize. I think we need to continue innovation and technological advances, but they are not going to replace people. We still need to have high-quality people in our courthouses. I think we should provide faster and less costly resolution. That's another point of the judicial branch. I am an advocate of mediation, but what I have found, and I don't know that judges always see this in our district courts, is they sometimes order it too soon. A lot of times in family law things, matters, they have mediation scheduled very quickly, and typically you need a bit of time to do the discovery and other things, and it's not necessarily as useful as it could be a little bit further down the road. The judicial branch wants to be open and transparent. I have had a reputation for truth, honesty, and excellence. It's important that Iowans are served by the court system and that we serve them. I serve as the Bremer County Bar Association president. I instituted lunchtime CLE. I know how busy people are. But for my colleagues, I schedule 1-hour programs over the lunch hour so that they could get more experience and continuing legal education. And I think you need to be fair and impartial. And one of the things that I really appreciate is having a full and fair hearing on issues. People want to be heard. They want to have their day in court. They want their issues resolved. Sometimes it doesn't always matter the outcome. People's lives can't move on until a court decision is made. And I think it's vitally important that Iowans have that opportunity. I have served as that advocate. I have contracted with the public defender and ensured justice. My practice has offered me trial court experience over the 23 years. I continue to try cases yet today. I mediated twice in the last 3 weeks. In 2017, I would note for you that the largest number of cases were criminal in nature. The second largest number of filings were in family law. Anyone you should consider for this position should have significant experience in the areas that are going to come up before the court. I represent what you might find in the majority of Iowa attorneys in rural practice. We are on the whole general practitioners. We have broad-based experiences. I do research, write motions, briefs, I probate estates. I found out a client passed away yesterday. We've already made arrangements to pull his will. We serve the community, and that's deeply important. These are cases that you will see at the Iowa Supreme Court level, and a wide variety of topics appear every year. It's my belief that an attorney should be prompt, polite, and prepared to serve clients. I still live on a gravel road. I live down in Benton County now because I got married, but I still live out in the country. I still drive to Waverly every day and serve the 24,000 people in my entire county to the best of my ability. I believe this is the broad-based experience that makes me the right candidate for the Iowa Supreme Court vacancy. I am deeply committed to the law and to Iowans. I would gladly field any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Luhring. We're going to start with my note says Mr. Gray this time.
I have no question.
Mr. Harbeck? Ms. O'Brien? Mrs. Roberts? Ms. Conover?
Ms. Luhring, you obviously manage a lot of different areas of practice, probably have a good number of clients on the phone with you every day looking for things, and it sounds like you're the often the chief cook and bottle washer and taking care of their cases. Coming into the Supreme Court environment, I would imagine there is a certain amount of collaboration necessary, give and take among the justices and coming up with decisions. What background do you have that prepares you for that kind of interaction with your colleagues?
Well, the first thing I would say is I was very lucky to land in Northeast Iowa, where I was from, and there have been times where I have had co-counsel because we've had joint defendants. I have had opportunities to work with a variety of individuals that at times co-defendants are charged. They're charged on the same trial information. I've also been extremely lucky with that mediation training, because that really down deep is a very collaborative process. We're a very lucky bar. For instance, if you would call me up rather than have a discovery dispute if you needed a tax return, or if you required somebody's paycheck stubs, that's something that very typically in Northeast Iowa, I would say, hey, give me a couple of days and I would get it to you. And so we work very collaboratively up there. We certainly talk at times about what we think, the right outcome of a case might be. I think we collaborate a lot in language we're going to put in stipulations. And I think that in some ways, stipulations are agreements to settle dissolutions. I think in some ways that's very much like writing an opinion. You're taking two sides and you're very much mixing what their agreement is going to be and how that's going to come out. And that essentially is going to be the case law these folks have to live with. And so I view drafting those documents as a very, very solemn responsibility. Thank you.
Mr. Bloom?
No, I just want to apologize that we couldn't get together for an interview.
And I would have enjoyed that. Thank you.
Mr. Goodwin?
We had a good discussion at my office that answered all my questions. Thank you.
Mr. Sukup? Thank you. Ms. Diekman?
Sharing microphones.
Yes, we're all very polite here too. You talked about, and I think Christine brought up the chief cook bottle washer, and you do a lot of things and do a lot for Iowans. You have a lot of time with your clients. It'd be a big change for the Supreme Court justice. I mean, I think there's a certain sense of isolation sometimes with the justices, and your interaction. You've developed your practice very well because you clearly get along with people well. Are you concerned about that if you're chosen as a Supreme Court justice? And could you address that, please?
Oh, the old practitioner's joke is if I got a week in jail, I could, essentially catch up with my sleep. But I'm really an avid reader. I'm an avid student. Let me start again. I'm an avid reader, and I'm very much a student of history. So when I'm not available to clients, I spend a lot of time reading. I spend a lot of time contemplating and considering. This past weekend, I was trout fishing with my husband. So there is some part of my soul that really does enjoy reading, learning, developing, growing, and having sort of that inner peace that comes with not having my phone ring all the time. I think it's been great practical experience. I run a small business. I'm responsible for a payroll. I'm responsible for tax returns. There's some aspect of moving on to something that I think is, at least in part, more academic that really is appealing to me. I was very much a studious person. So.
Thank you.
Ms. Sinclair? Mr. Bevel?
Ms. Luhring, whoever gets this job is going to have a learning curve.
Oh, yeah.
What area is going to be the steepest for you?
I would say it's not necessarily going to be in the portion of the learning the sort of general areas of law. I think it'd be hard to handle a probate matter or a tax matter without that background. However, I think the steepest curve for me is probably going to be getting used to working with a clerk. That's something I've never done. I think it's going to be areas of law that are more obscure. The recent Alliant Energy decision dealt with areas of railroad law and intersections of Iowa tort law that were a little bit more obscure than what I'm used to. So I know that there's going to be a learning curve in asking questions from the bench. I've been peppered with questions from the bench, but I've never had that opportunity to ask questions. And so I know anyone that gets this job to a large extent is going to have to deal with that. I've also taken some looks at the budgeting and at the return of investments and the other things that are available in the court, and nothing I've done is to that scale. I don't think probably any of us have ever handled a budget necessarily to that scale. And so it's going to be that idea in economics of economies of scale and making decisions that work on a larger basis as well when we have to deal with issues that pertain to the court. But I'm a good listener, and I am certainly willing to listen to input that would benefit Iowans and would benefit, in particular, maybe folks that are in smaller towns and smaller courthouses. I think that's important. Thank you.
Dr. Taylor? Mr. Diaz?
I think I may go out on a limb and say that if you're appointed, you probably would be the first Supreme Court justice that was a little Miss Pigtails. But you and I had a good conversation on the phone about the impact that what I consider sort of the disconnect between urban and rural. And I thought you gave me probably one of the best responses that I've had from all of the applicants. But help me understand what you bring from your experience in rural Iowa to the Supreme Court. What is it that, you know, you might have a steep learning curve about one thing or another, but what is it that you bring to the court that maybe others could learn from you?
I really think that broad-based knowledge and experience. I've practiced in both the First District and I am frequently in 2A. I've actually practiced in, I believe I counted up 5 of the districts to some limited extent. But what is very, very different in rural Iowa from what we see, even say going to the courthouse in Lynn or Blackhawk County, is that the practice tends to be very different. The bar tends to be very collegial. The bar tends to get along well, and people actually, if you get a court date in the Second District, you're likely to have your trial on that date. And that's one of the things that's been very troubling to me with First District cases, is they expect a criminal defendant to take off and come to a pretrial, which is fine, that's a reasonable expectation, but week after week. And if it's set for trial and the case isn't reached, that criminal defendant is expected to take off work again for another pretrial, is expected to take off work and sit in the courthouse. And I can tell you, I had a young man that I tried the Owasso case, it's in my application. We spent a month trying to get a case to trial. He came to pretrials, he took off work. We sat in the courthouse on Tuesday mornings till 10:30, 11 in the morning, and we're told that your case isn't reached. And that's a huge disconnect with what we get in rural Iowa. For the most part, if cases get set in the Second District, with few exceptions, they get heard. The other thing that I've noticed in the First District is huge delays. A lot of the divorces, if I take a divorce case in the First District, aren't heard for over a year. We have basically a 10-month window, and cases get heard in some of the other districts. And so I think the access to justice in terms of if you get a court date, it's kept, is good. The problem seems to be that the administrative personnel is much less in these areas. There is 1 person in Butler. There were 4 when I started. 1 person is essentially now taking on the load of 4 people with some, electronic help, but electronic people, filing things or approving filings don't answer the phone. They don't help pro se litigants scan in documents. And I see that as a huge denial of access to justice in the rural areas. And I think some of that experience of going to the courthouse and, bumping your nose on the door because it's closed has really been eye-opening for me. And I think that that's something that I can offer insight and assistance with.
Mr. Becker? Ms. Bowden? Ms. Pearson? I don't think I have any questions either. Anybody else have one for the order? Okay, well, we appreciate your application and we thank you for coming and we wish you the best of luck in this process.
Thank you, everyone.